In 3, 2, 1, action. What's going on, everybody? It's me, Asad Hashim Ali, back again with another episode of Behind the Grind. And this time we've got someone very special, just like all the other guests. This time we've got Zain Umar with us. Zain, how you doing?
I'm good, alhamdulillah.
Thanks for coming on, man.
You have no idea how big a favor this is, by the way.
Well,
I hate the sound of myself on recording. If there's anybody else, I tell them to fuck off. But because you asked, I said, okay, I'll do this.
All right, I appreciate it, dude. But no, this is gonna be fun. And I think, by the way, everyone starts off by saying that. And then when they see the final product,
I've done this with Kazi before, bro.
No, you didn't like it then?
I hate the sound of my own voice, man. Like, I can't explain it. I just listen to it later on recording and I think, man, yeah. In my head, I sound cooler and I come off more pinned up. Then I realize.
All right, chalo. But I can't change that now.
Chilling.
Chilling. But the reason I've called Zain on is because Zain is someone who I get in touch with every now and then just to understand what's happening in startup land in Pakistan and get an understanding of what the financial markets are like. Also, he randomly gets in touch with me to get some insights from our industry at Backspace and at Alt Academy, just to test out or like spar on different ideas. Zain right now is the head of fintech at Creditbook. Am I right?
Yep.
But you didn't start off from Creditbook. You were in PE at once upon a time.
Post MBA from LUMS, I started off in private equity. I was at a fund called Baltoro, based out of Islamabad and Lahore. We had $50 million to play with. Did 3 deals, one of which I was the lead associate on. That was in NBP Funds, previously known as NAFA. So that's the largest mutual fund company in Pakistan. So Baltoro acquired a significant stake in that. So I looked at that there. That's why I got to see a lot of the financial sector services, fintech. We did a lot of research in, new trends and things over there.
Nice.
So I did that.
Yeah.
Then obviously I had the Kida. I had to try my own startup.
Yeah.
So I started my own thing. It's called ZAS. Zyada Asani Se. It's basically a gig economy play for home services, electricians, plumbers,
Whenabouts was this?
This was about 2019 ke end mein. So about right before the pandemic started.
Okay.
Khair, didn't work. There was a whole boatload of problems with the model. It's a huge thing. Every other year, like, someone gets in. Sakoon started back in the day.
Yeah.
And I'm still convinced, man, there's a great big problem for it. But there's some fundamental issues that I just realized I'm not the best person to solve these problems. And my actual vision for it was building up a massive network and being able to do all of these things, right? But I was never going to make too much money off it. Uber doesn't make too much money. None of these plays actually are profitable as they seem. But what I never understood that no one did was your entire supply chain on the back. So like my karigars and all of these guys. Once I get the data, once I know how much business they're going and I'm bringing them business as well, there's a lot of scope to offer financial inclusion for them. You can lend to them, you can get their accounts open, you can get them insurance, man. Just simple for guys working in your ghar ka BB outside. People cry and say, why is it so expensive? But like one mistake, he's dead. And they don't have any safety gear and stuff, right? So there's all of this play that I wanted to do over there. But then I realized that to do that is such a roundabout way, and I'm not the best to build up the network in the first place. Put the ego aside. I hit up Aseep. I knew him from before. I liked what Creditbook was doing. And I said, if we're working on financial inclusion and particularly for these types of people, then this is where I should be at.
So tell me about Creditbook. It started off as a digital ledger, right?
Yeah. So it's basically digitizing the accounts that people do it, right? So it's not full proper P&Ls. They run a khata, which is, they're basically their receivables and payables. And then there's their cash entries in and out, right?
Yeah.
So we have the cash book feature, which deals with that, the revenue and expense side. And then we have the basic ledger, which is the khata, which is sort of like the account. So their balance sheet that they maintain. So start off with that and very simple premise, right? Which was that we'll help increase your cash flows, right? Or improve your cash flows. And the way that it works is that when you record everything with us, we send automated reminders out to people free of charge. We found that it makes them
to the customers,
to the end user. So you are a user.
Yeah.
You say that, man, Zain owes me, Sir Bilal owes me or whatever, right?
Yeah.
On the date that it's due, the message will go out to them, reminding them to pay. And it's just like, think about it like a credit card payment, right?
Yeah.
I never remember when the date comes up. I remember when I get a message and say, oh shit, I have to pay.
Yeah.
So just by doing that, we're able to increase the cash flow. So that was just one step in on the entry. And then the goal always was, the company's got a very clear mission. It's to exponentially increase financial outcomes for entrepreneurs, right? So that's one step in doing it. Everything else, how you're going to go about doing that, the different models and things to play out with it. But the most obvious play is to lean into financial inclusion through proper fintech and sort of increasing their ability to earn through access to proper financial channels.
So before we get into the fintech side of it, like what about inventory management? Because then I could see that if you have this being placed in the stores, then there's a lot of opportunity just within the confines and the stores and the karyani ki dukans, right? What about that?
Oh yeah, so Kiryana specifically, you don't really need an inventory management solution.
Yeah.
His shop is so small, he looks left, right, he knows everything.
Yeah.
It's in front of his eyes. If you're like a wholesaler, you have a lot of large other, multiple godams, it matters for you a lot. For inventory management specifically, there are a lot of solutions. There's some Red X something, I can't remember the name, that was on. There's something called Vyapa, which is an Indian app. A lot of people use that.
Here?
A lot of people use that. So for the inventory specific side, and it's not to say that we won't look into it, but it's got limited use cases. You need to be very, very clear. Every business is different. Certain types have a need for it and certain types don't. So you just have to decide who you're targeting and where you're bringing the feature out for.
So coming to the fintech side of it, now what are you doing? What's your role? I'm sure you didn't start off as in this area at Creditbook.
I started off as something called Product Ops Fintech, which was basically, when I left, he was like, what do you want to do? I said, I want to work in product. He's like, bro, but you don't know anything about product. You haven't done jack shit on it. I said, fuck it, bro. I just want to make like financial products. I'm good at that. Trust me. So we started off as that. I wasn't even a product manager. But then I effectively became the product manager for, a couple of the fintech plays that we're doing, then built out the team, and then slowly it built up and elevated. And I realized I'm not the best guy to do this specific role, but I know the broad strategy and what's needed over here. So I sort of just said, man, honest to God, I can do it myself, or I can hire someone who'll do it better than me. And I did that once, did that twice, and I got the free reign to do that. Slowly built up a team around me and executed myself up at the top over there like that. But it wasn't a planned tactical move for my career. It was just where could I add the best value. So I just went wrong and landed up here.
Cool. And what's the way forward like now? What are you working on exactly?
Man, so right now we're looking at a lot of other things, right? So we've got a mobile wallet feature which is out. Just initial phases, and our competitors have it also, right? So DigiKhata, Udhar Book, these guys have it as well, which is sort of like a closed loop wallet with just one purpose. It allows you to buy and sell mobile load, right? But think about it from the perspective of a store owner. So it's not like the Easy Paisa app where you are buying yourself load. This is when you're selling it to other people. They've got like 4 little handsets, those really small old Nokia phones, right? They send an SMS code. That's how it's already being done. But they earn very little of that, like very, very little. So if you're able to buy in bulk, pass along and share the commissions with them, helps them improve their financial outcomes, help them earn more from there. But it's a very good way to understand a lot of complexities that comes with dealing with anything to do with payments without having to go full deep into it. So that's one thing that we've looked at there. We've explored, an experimental phase, lending to lots of different industries, seeing how that works out. So the way that I describe it is right now we are in a deep experimentation phase. We know we want to, we know how we're going to monetize. Not that we have no clue, right? But the question is how it's going to work, because you're doing something that hasn't really been done in Pakistan before, at least hasn't been done in scale. The way I keep telling people right now is, and I even tell my team this, it's about increasing the velocity of, experimentation and your learnings. Just increase the velocity of your learnings, and then you will have something really concrete to pour gasoline on. Otherwise, like, I don't want to call shade on anyone, man, but like you can raise $85 million and then do a pivot and then do another pivot. I don't believe in doing that unless you're absolutely forced to.
No, makes sense. But with this right now, like with the number of like iterations that you could do and experimentations that you could do, what stood out for me with what you guys are doing at Creditbook is just the design philosophy as a whole, that like it seems to be made with these businesses that actually would use your product in the first place?
There's a reason for that though, because one of the founders is Iman.
Yeah.
She's the head of design.
Yeah.
So usually design doesn't have such a strong voice, at
Yeah.
least on a founder level. It's very rare to have it across some
Yeah.
companies, right? And there's some design fundamental basics, right? It's called human-centric design and stuff like that. And that was just driven really deep into the DNA of the way product is done.
Yeah.
So other people, we say they ship fast, we say we ship smart. That's not to say that we can't ship faster. We're always pushing ourselves to be better. But the primary emphasis is on it has to be done with
you basically
them
made
in
something
mind.
sticky from the get-go.
Yeah,
rather
it has
than
to be
trying
done
to
with
make
them
it
in mind.
sticky. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then so keeping this in mind, the human-centered design aspect of it, what other opportunities like are you guys working on or that you see could be like a like a blue ocean as a whole right now?
If you're talking about blue oceans, there's one that we haven't touched yet, but it's very, very big. It's the saving side, right?
Yeah.
Lending, everyone likes to talk because you keep hearing about the TAM and the mismatch and banks don't lend and all such a bit. But everyone and their goddamn dog is doing lending, okay? Like, Bazaar is doing it, retailer is doing it, either through a partner or something. You've got Marvin, you've got Kist Pay, you've got everyone attacking lending from every different side because they're like, acha, credit pay ko yahan pe. And what I see it happening is unless you're very, very smart about the niches you play in, it's going to get bloody real fast, right?
Yeah.
Particularly when you've got players like Bazaar, Retailer and all like that who are earning on two sides by giving financing and the margins they earn on supply chain.
Yeah.
So they're willing to take a hit also and lend even riskier to increase their GMVs also, right? So when you're sitting with players like that, it's a tricky market to play in, so you have to be very, very careful. The reasons why I say savings is like a blue ocean, right, is because people assume that we're a country of broke people and there's no money.
They got
people
money
save.
under their
People
couches,
save. To put this in perspective, man, there's this crypto report, I can't remember, but the amount of money that was put into crypto from Pakistan
$40 million
is about 4 times the entire mutual fund assets under management of the country, right? 4 to 5 times that. Binance is the 3rd or 4th most popular app. You go to a pan wala, they've got Binance on their phone.
Yeah.
So it's not that they can't save. You just have to crack the UX. You just have to somehow find a hit. You need to partner with Vakar Zaka and get him to take it to the masses, right? Yeah. And there is money to be put in. People are just doing it in informal ways.
Yeah.
And a couple of players have seen that.
Yeah.
So I hadn't heard anything about it a year ago. Very recently, a lot of people have been bringing this up. So I'm very excited to see what can be done there.
Yeah. Because like I had someone from the team at Abhi come as well. And this was actually what came up, that savings ka kya product hai, but unfortunately didn't get much out. But when you talk about lending, explain to me, how does this work? Because now with like interest rates rising everywhere, right? Money is now seeming to be more expensive than what it was. How would the unit economics for this even work out in the first place? Because now what I'm also seeing, and I'm a bit naive towards this whole side, there's also this rush towards businesses now trying to reach profitability too. They have to change their approach. And if you bring in lending into that, it just makes me feel like, what's the spread that they would be earning on?
Oh, yeah. So if you can figure out a way to keep your non-performing loans, I'm going to refer to them as NPLs for the rest of the podcast, loans? But basically say like the guy didn't pay you back.
Yeah.
There's accounting definitions the banks have to adhere to, which is if he hasn't paid by X months, it has to be counted as a write-off. But essentially like banda tumhare paise leke bhag gaya.
Yeah.
Or bhaga bhi nahi, something happened, his business got burnt and it's gone. So bad debts, right? As long as you account well for those and you account for your cost of capital. So everything you described is increasing your cost of capital. Yeah. You can still lend profitably if you're just charging enough. And this is something that my professor at LUMS taught me, right? He worked with the World Bank and he worked in like India and China and all across the places, right? Really cool old guy, a lot of experience. And he's like, I should keep telling them the World Bank also. They like regulate this, and there's a whole shadow banking industry built up in China that fueled a lot of their growth for the longest time with interest rates incredibly high. And they're like, this is unfair. They said, man, worry about getting the rates to be fair later. First, at least get them access to capital. Because if it's too high, at least from a business perspective, there's a lot more thought going into it than just a consumer loan ke credit card pe main joote kharid raha hu, iPhone kharid raha, right? For business perspective,
so the likelihood of it being a bad debt,
the likelihood of them making a sound decision if the rate is too high, they'll know. If they're losing money on it because they can't afford it, they just won't take it, right? Some cases they might mismatch it, but the likelihood of that is much smaller, right? So the rate being high, you just have to charge a high enough rate, right? And you can get away with it. And you'd be surprised, man, how insane the rates go. Just look at the agri sector, right? Aarti on average is taking about 150 to 200% easy. Sahi hai? That's like the kind of interest rates that are being charged over there. You come in and charge even 50%, which makes people's jaw drop and think, you're like the biggest, what do you call it, shark in the town.
Yeah.
And you're giving them 75% off what they'd already be paying. So it's already being done. It's just being done incredibly informally, right? If you look at one industry, this is the textile industry. Exporters get paid late. They pay everybody else late. They pay down the supply chain late. And everyone has priced this into their decision making because they know they're going to be paid 3 months later. They're charging you 8 to 10% premiums on that, right? And if you look at that as just a cost of financing, it's fucking high interest rates. But you can get, it's already being done, man.
Yeah.
You can still get in, do it better, do it cheaper, and have plenty of room to play. But the key here is if you can control for the bad debts. That is the critical part.
And this reason that they would still come to you is just because of ease of access and you've already got them hooked in.
Not just ease of access, man. It's like ease of access and just the fact that they are getting, if it's like for like rate to what they're getting in the market, they won't come with you, right?
Yeah.
And also the understanding that if they do well, you're able to increase. Because these guys are all hustling to grow. You are just one option for them. They're the chacha, mamu, taya. They've got people in the mohallas. They have committees that they're recycling. They're scrapping together cash any way they can, right? So if you are just a good option and you're willing to grow their limit with them as well as they go on, then they'll very happily stick with you.
So, interesting, yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna switch up and keep this interest rate point in mind. But like tell me what's happening right now in startup land in Pakistan. It seems like everyone is kind of on edge. This drive for profitability, growth conversations, I feel like have kind of really boiled down, and things have become hush hush. What's happening? Why is that happening as well?
Man, so basically what happened is, so everybody knows like Pakistan, we're used to it, but for the last 20 years, the Western world hasn't really seen high inflation, right? Or they haven't seen it officially. Multiple reasons for that. One is a lot of your consumer stuff. You're driving around was subsidized by Uber. Your delivery at home was subsidized by like Delivery Hero and guys like this. So you weren't feeling it there. But there wasn't this feeling of that. But as inflation goes up, interest rates have to go up as well. Right? It's a simple economic correlation that runs there. And when interest rates go up, the first things you cut are your riskiest asset classes. And VC money in a emerging market, I think we're still technically classified as a frontier market. So even below emerging market, technical classification pe, that's where we land. That is the first thing to get cut. So when the money dries up, then you need to change your game plan. You need to start worrying about profitability, extending your runway, doing all of this. Except, I don't know, I wouldn't say any one party is at fault. One thing I will call out on was the VCs that were putting money into some models that were just fundamentally unsustainable, right? In the hopes that someone else will put in money, and then you'll get an exit before
you just
it all goes up the card or something like that. And a little bit is also on just, I guess, it's not even their fault. They should have been guided by the VCs also on this, but just the founders' expectations weren't realistic, right? It's not to say like the money couldn't come in. And to be fair, no one would assume the amount of money that came in the last 2 years, right? Like no one had ever thought that much would even come in. But in Pakistan, whenever money comes in, right, and I saw this in private equity as well, it comes in waves. You have like 2 good years where it's all good. Then you have like a current account deficit or a political, something happens, okay? It's almost like a 5-year cycle or something like that. Then you get like 2-3 year dried up period. Or like anywhere from 2 years to 5 years. Then you get another 2 good years. Usme paise raise karte ho, and then it
like VC
all
money
goes
ka
out
trend
as
was
well.
like 2014, 15, and then 16 mein achance se dhop, and then 18, 19 pe you start seeing that rise again.
And then it went up again.
And then what, like it's coming
so
down now?
Right now it's been cut, but it's not like it's not happening, right? Farmdar just raised round back by Indus Valley Capital. So it's like people are still putting in money. But the ones who are tight, right, will be the ones between the Series A, Series B's ranges. They're in trouble because over there everyone's like, the ticket size is so big, I got to really think before backing it. Before that, it's sort of buying like a lottery ticket. And the amounts are so small in the international standards that everyone comes in by a little piece.
So keeping all of this in mind, and like especially how the VC, firstly, what is the VC model like? Like how is it different in the way it's being paid in Pakistan versus in the West? Or is it pretty much the same?
There are different VC playbooks, some of which you can see being played out within Pakistan, right? One is your Tiger Global model, which
Yeah.
is you essentially become an index fund for everyone. So
Hmm.
it's Tiger Global, SoftBank, put tons and tons and tons of money,
Yeah.
okay, uh, across a bunch of big bets.
Yeah.
Because you don't know who's going to win, but it's called the power law, right? So your one big winner is going to make so much up that he'll cover all the losses
Yeah.
and still put you in the green. So one playbook is like that. Another is that people focus on specialty. What do you call it? Another one is like sort of the Sequoia playbook, which is you do a ton of investments, but you also take control of the country in your hand. But you make sure that you're on the board. You make sure that you're giving your inputs. You flip the CEO out when you want to and things like that. Because you feel that you are better placed to make those decisions going on. And you're playing off your expertise, right? That's another one. Then another one is where you don't get hands on like that, but you just make a bunch of small deals and you put a lot of time into each individual one and you give coaching guidance. So there are a couple of different playbooks, and all of those are working on Pakistan. I haven't seen anyone in Pakistan really playing something so different from one variation of either of these three. Everyone's got that. Like Zain Capital's got a tons of deals. Put money here, lots of places. Atif Awan doesn't put it all. He makes a few select bets every once in a while. And then there are other people in the middle who are sort of like,
so Marcas was very similar.
Yeah.
So what is it that because I'm sure VCs have seen this kind of situation in the past. Pakistan is seeing this for the first time, or Pakistani founders are seeing this for the first time. So what are we as founders over here not really learning or looking back in time about?
Man, it's not even looking back in time. It's very easy to sit here and just say, oh, it plays out like this. But the cost of being wrong by being too conservative is much higher than the cost of being wrong than playing with the trend of everybody else. Because if everybody gets wiped out because of a global scenario, anywhere else you go to work from there or anywhere else you go to start your own thing and raise again, you get benchmarked against what everybody else happened. And it's like, okay, they had a shit run. This is fine. But if you were over conservative and you felt something's going wrong and you go against it, right? And it doesn't crash then. Crashes maybe a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later. You suddenly look like the outlier who was an idiot, right? So everyone knows Big Short. You've seen the movie, right? Movie doesn't talk about it. That same playbook was done by many investment banks.
Yeah.
Many of them just did it too early. And they ran out of their money before the swing came around. So no one ever talks about the guy who was being just as smart. They just timed it differently. And that little bit comes down to luck. Like purely honestly, it just comes down to luck.
So what do you feel like is the landscape going to be like in the next couple of years?
Man,
keeping in mind, like, because in Pakistan, I feel like volatility has always been there. Ease of business was never really there as such. Political instability has always been there as well. Change of governments right now, IMF loans, us fucking fear of default and all that shit happening. And with this new money coming in, hot money traveling from one side to the other side, next 2 years, what do you feel like? Personal, just like thoughts, impressions.
Man, what's going to happen is there's going to be just a couple of ones that just fold up, right? It is what it is. It happens all the time and there's a crunch. Some people aren't able to secure their runway in time. And sometimes not even their fault, man. Like investors who've committed and signed everything just say, okay, I'm not giving the check. What you going to do? So in those situations, some people just will fold up. Feel a couple of them would be forced to focus on the fundamentals, right? And the ones who come out of this period will be the ones that are really, really strong. That said, not all players are hurt by this, right? Some players benefit from all of these bad things. If you are in a gig economy play where someone else can earn a side hustle, you're actually perfect product market fit right now, right? So you will still do well in these scenarios. It depends each one to each other, right? But what I hope will happen is that a couple of founders will just put their egos aside and do some consolidation. Realize, man, you want to do this, we want to do this. We've got X amount of resources.
Partner
we put it together. I call it the PayPal example, man. This is exactly what happened at PayPal. Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, they came together. They both realized they went to war. They're not going to do what they wanted to do. They aligned in a vision of what this wanted to do. Funny enough, that was not PayPal. Their vision to me reads exactly like what Bitcoin ended up being. This is an alternative to the US dollar. But they did that and they were able to survive, right? I would really like to see a couple of players just, put their ego aside a little bit and come together for the larger thing, because some of the challenges that we're trying to take on are so bloody big. It's not going to be solved by people sniping each other left, right. And I saw that happen that's one thing that I saw was good for the VC industry in Pakistan. They help share deals left, right. Lots of people co-sign on deals and everyone comes together and it goes like that. Private equity is different. Private equity is cutthroat. This is my deal. I'm guarding it.
Don't tell
There are
anyone.
code names for everything. There's Project Alpha, Project Ronaldo, and all shit like this, right? In case you're talking about and someone over here is you. There's very, very siloed.
Yeah,
you know, मेरी 4 ईंटों के सामने मस्जिद बना दी and this is what it is. And what happened was it didn't grow big enough. Abraj happened. Reputational risk for every Pakistani player in private equity, and the money dried up. Abraj folded and went. Baltoro is still going strong, but they should have been able to raise a second fund by now, and that got delayed by all of this, right? JS Bank had a fund also.
Inflation, interest rate hikes.
This one would have hit them again, unfortunately. But even before that, right, the Arif Naqvi Abraj thing, that just scared a lot of people from being able to put in their money over there. So if they don't come together to grow the whole market, this is going to be a lot of value left on the table and just left out because of egos.
But do you feel like over here, we as like entrepreneurs even understand that? Because it's also a matter of what I feel like it's nice and pleasant to think about, okay, partnerships, consolidations, collaborations, all of those fun things as well. And I can see that working out. It's a no-brainer, if anything. And I'm like literally no one in that space. But it's like me saying, yaar, Alt Academy could potentially merge with another edtech altogether and give them actually a different separate, like, 2 different products and expand their market size and then work on whatever growth they want together. And same goes for Backspace too. And these conversations have happened. I would like to think that we are wise enough to also know which opportunities to pursue and which not to pursue. But I feel like over here, there's some sentiment around is that don't ask, don't tell, don't share my information. This is me. So the private equity mindset with the founders of these of these startups, whereas the VCs are kind of thinking about, okay, if I keep sharing information, then word is going to spread, which is a good thing and a bad thing as well for the business.
To be fair, not all VCs. I give a lot of credit to this to I2I, Misbah Naqvi, Kulsum Lakhani.
Yeah.
They used to do this industry report, which is the gold standard for Pakistan.
Yeah.
And they take all the research that they would do and they give it to free.
Yeah.
So, market badhao. If I took those guys out of it, I don't know if it would have played out the same way. But there's every industry. It's not that everyone there and they're working like that, but there's just enough players to make it work like that happen. One thing that you got on is very right is you need to realize whether it's the right point to do, right? So it's not to say that on paper, like on Excel, it might work out and look good, but the vast majority of, not just in startups, all mergers, acquisitions, things like this, tend to be value decreasing, right? Because people take for granted just how tough it is to merge 2 entities together. The most important thing that I say to come down to is, why did you become a founder, right? Did you become a founder because you wanted to be rich? And have that chashka and be Forbes 30 under 30. Do you genuinely care about solving the problem?
Yeah.
If you genuinely care about solving the problem, find another like-minded person, and the values and everything of the way the companies are aligned, that they can fit together and work together, then it should work out. But I'm not sure how many of them genuinely are doing it because that's a problem, or this is a big problem that's interesting, but I want to be rich also. And there's nothing wrong being rich, right? But what is the primary driver, right? Because I know people like this who I've talked to them, so why don't you do your own thing? He says, man, I can start my own thing, or I can continue working where I am, where I have a lot of power and influence. And it's about making the decision on where can I add the most impact. And where I feel like it's better to do my own thing, I'll do my own thing. And where I am right now, maybe I'll stick with that. And those guys, if they choose to become founders, those guys are the guys that I know will be able to think like this, right? But I don't know how many players like that are actually out there in this space.
So now, based on your network and about the VC space as well, how many of these VCs would end up? I don't know why, I just can't help but get out of this dark thought about what's going to happen in Pakistan. But if one of the startups over here is like the 85 million, the 37 and a half, the 12, the 1.2, anyone fucks up and shuts down, or folds, to keep it clean, is that going to lead to some kind of like bad mouth, like bad word of mouth, or some kind of like negative sentiment towards investing in Pakistan? Because again, outsider perspective, seeing how fast money's come in and seeing the scale at which money's coming in, for I know, grander scheme of things, it's peanuts compared to what happens in the outside world. However, the illusion of so few opportunities and so few investments coming in and having so much hype is kind of clouding judgment as well over here, I feel.
I don't think that's going to be a problem now. I think there's definitely a point early in the ecosystem where if airlift went down at the point back then, it was such a clear outlier that it would have crushed the confidence.
Yeah.
By now, you've got your bazaars, you've got like retailers. There's been so many.
So it's like they were
raised,
when you
right?
say outlier,
That is
like
diversified enough, right? Ke, okay, ek गिर गया, but बाकी इतने और खड़े हैं, right? So it's not going to crush the entire.
But you're saying this based on the difference in niches or verticals that they're in, or you're saying this based on Series A versus the rest? Series B versus the rest.
Just like the amount of money that's important and it goes down the drain, right? Like if they were to fail, if it's like half of all the VC money that's ever come into Pakistan just went down like in one company, then it'll make people shit bricks. If it's more diversified than that, then you've got enough examples standing big, standing tall, right? That people are like, okay, they understand this. It's a fundamental part of the VC game. The vast assumption is the majority of startups will fold. They don't make it all the way across the line. That's the underlying assumption in the way that you invest in VCs. Yeah. So as long as you have enough confidence that there are enough opportunities coming up, enough are able to break past in the different levels, right? Then it shouldn't be a problem.
So, interesting. So with all of this, how are things panning out for you guys at Creditbook now? Like what changes in your strategies have you guys done? How are you guys restructuring? Are you focusing your attention towards one particular area now, or continuing?
Man, honest to God, trying to think of the only thing that I think that it's affected at all for our strategy is just like a little bit more focus on, there's some like outlier, wild, crazy things we want to try that we just parked and saying, okay, let's try this later. But we're not that huge a company. Total people are between like 60 to 70 people in the org. I can't even remember the exact number because we still have people joining in, but like everyone's doing massive layoffs. We're still hiring on a bunch of fronts because 6 months back, like Haseeb, who's the founder, he's and me were talking. He says, "Bro, the music's gonna stop." And it is going to happen, right? And he has an advantage versus a lot of the founders is because he has a passion for economics, particularly in fintech, right? So he was very abreast of all these things. He's really looking into all of this, right? And he says, man, just this is gonna happen. So have your strategy like this to begin with to account for this, right? So in that terms, there's no deviation or strategy because this is going in line with what we expected to see happening. But to be fair, if it had not happened right now, it happened a year and a half later and everyone else just passed us, then he would look like a smart guy and be like, yeah, what an idiot. So
the conservative guy.
So the conservative guy. So this is an example of the conservative pie where it worked off well and, went well over there. So it didn't really affect our strategy. We had this in line to begin with. The team was very small. We're always very tight about who we bring on. There has to be increasing. You need to be like raising the bar with each person you're bringing in. You can't have your talent level, your average talent level dropping. And the other thing is just a very strong maintenance on the culture of the people you want to work with. So because of that, we never went too big on like hiring shit tons of people. We were just always very slow, careful, take it and build it.
And everyone in the team is quite young also, right? Like because you said culture, what I've seen is...
So I'm trying to think, the oldest guy might be 36, 37.
Damn, that's old.
The oldest guy. Outlier. So me and the founders were all on the older end, so like 30.
You guys are the uncles.
The average age of the company sits at I think about 25.
Shit.
Yeah. That's a conscious decision. So there's a lot of debate between people, right? That you need to hire experienced people to help build it up from there. And we're like, man, if you want to do something different, you can't have people coming in with baggage. Pick young people, ton of potential, and how do you get them up to where they need to be fast enough? And I've seen some people like, blow away expectations. I would not believe that they'd be able to grow as fast as they did.
No.
I was skeptical of it. I became a believer after working in this. So we made a conscious choice to be a company primarily geared around young people.
Mm-hmm.
But that is going to change as we grow into like a Series B, Series D types. Because then you're going to have to come in and get like more senior.
The requirement of capacity is different at that time.
So then it'll change. So I don't know how long we'll be able to keep the youthfulness there. But for the stage that we're in now, it's been working well for us.
So tell me, I want to know a little bit about the culture, because even before recording, you were like, it's actually amazing.
Yeah.
How so? How is it being, actually, don't tell me how so. Tell me, how is that being enforced, or how is that being created?
Okay. So it's basically being enforced by a lot of painstaking attention and detail right down from the CEO. All of the founders, everyone contributes towards it, right? But it's sort of, I would say, mostly it's like Haseeb's vision of what he wants the company to be, right? The kind of workplace that he always wanted to work at, right? So that's where it's coming in there. And it's being enforced because it's there in our hiring process. It's a culture fit that you have to do no matter what.
Yeah.
Then it's in the values that we keep reiterating. And then we've got like an appreciation channel on Slack, right? So when you anyone can give anyone else a shout out. And usually when you give a shout out, it's always encourages, you link it with one of the core company values. This is what I'm doing. So it's like bias for action, right? Empathy with your coworkers, curiosity, pushing boundaries. So those are the particular things that are always highlighted. And it's drilled into you from day one, right? That the end outcome is not what you're giving too much of a shit about. If you're living these values, you will get to the right outcome, right? Eventually. But it's more important for the way that you get there to be done through exhibiting this. I can't micromanage everything to a small detail to ensure that the outcomes are always being met like this.
Yeah.
What we can do is make sure that the basic fundamental ways of values that will get you there,
are being embodied.
Those are being brought in. And it comes in very heavy. So we're a remote first company, every quarter, whole team comes in and they're made sure that they're like, they get to talk to each other and it's drilled in again.
Yeah.
Every month or so when the new joiners coming in, they get an AMA, they get a whole crash course, and this is the values, this is what you're going to be judged against, this is what you're going to be done. Even in your performance appraisals and things, right? It's not like you met X KPI or some shit. It's, did you live this? Show bias for action? Did you show this? Did you show that? Those are the things that we're judging people on. And so far, it's alhamdulillah managed to hold. It's not to say no one has ever gotten by and hasn't been not a cultural fit.
Yeah.
But you find that out pretty quick and they realize also, and then it's just simple understanding between them that, man, it ain't going to work.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's good to see that this is being put into action, man. Everyone talks a big game.
Man, it's one of those things that like, it's one of those cliches, right, about culture. Everyone sells it, but no one really gives a shit. No one gets into it.
Yeah.
But it's actually very important, man. And
no, I do at Backspace, we make content around this. Like, it's literally everywhere. There's papers everywhere that has something or the other to do about like our culture and our value system. Even at Alt, we've got plastered everywhere. Then it has to be drilled in. But more about like, it's a reflection of yourself too. What you were saying, like, if before the shout out, have that action, like place the value itself. What we're trying to do is make sure that in just our day-to-days, we've actually embodied it. But again, from the leadership side, before everybody else can subscribe.
It has to come from top down and it can be encouraged from the bottom up.
Yeah.
Right? And there have been a lot of like, young people who've just come in and brought a different spin to the way things have been done.
Yeah.
So that gets encouraged and like, okay, fit it. This guy's got a great idea. This girl's got a great idea. Lo, chalo, and it's being brought in there.
Yeah.
But if it's not coming from the top down over there, then you start getting cracks in it, and then you have these pockets of bad culture developing and like bad habits forming in places. And I've seen that so much, man. Engro is loaded with it. Every large corporation is loaded with this. Baltoro wasn't a small ass team, like 10 people, right?
Yeah.
And
if it wasn't those 10, though, it'd be a problem.
Yeah. So when you get too many people, it always becomes very tough to enforce. But so far, alhamdulillah, we've managed to be able to keep it tight.
Interesting. So I have two last questions for you. Based on this entire discussion and what you've experienced, what is your advice to anyone that actually wants to get into starting off their own venture or a startup or anything, keeping in mind what the climate is like today? What do you have to know? What should you even do it in the first place? Because people are asking me and I'm like, well, There's never really the right time. It's never really the right time.
Man, there's so many things that go into it, right? And I just keep trying to do the same thing. I said, because depending on the market, right?
Yeah.
Like sometimes when everything is in the shitter,
Hmm.
your product, if it solves the problem, then that is the best time for you to,
Yeah.
you know, actually come out with that product, and you've got product market fit at that moment to go with
Yeah.
it, right? Then I would say the single most important thing, though, I'd say is it's not even about the timing. It's not even about investments, money coming in. All that shit is secondary, man. I'll give you an example, right? VC money drying up, all this space. Do you know Rafe Dosal?
Yeah,
Akil's
Waggles.
friend. Yeah. Waggles. The dude started in his kitchen.
Yeah.
It's not a VC-backed company.
Yeah.
Okay. He got investment. He got investment from Sean people, but
Yeah.
he didn't do it through any big connect like that.
Yeah.
Sean lived in Miss Henna's. Guy used to live in Miss Henna's building. Okay. So through apne network in Jaan Pahchan, he started making dog food in his kitchen. Me and Taha used to go and pick it up for our dogs. Okay. Like wahan se packets mein uthate the. He had it vacuum sealed and stuff. Wahan se. But he used to make the batches at home. And in 3 years, alhamdulillah, he's got a factory up and running. He's doing cat food now. Export ki bhi baatein chal rahi thi. Alhamdulillah.
Damn.
Like the guy's crushed it, right?
Yeah.
Because his thing aligned perfectly. The dollar getting expensive, all of this happening, rising trend of cats, what do you call it? Cats, dogs, pet ownership is going up, and people caring about what their pets eat more than it was before. That regardless of all this other crap, it worked, right? So if you're bang on with that, it'll do well. The single most important thing is that the talk about product market fit, I say this is something that screwed me in my last startup, which was founder problem fit. Are you the right person to solve that problem? And if you're not, doesn't matter if everything else aligns, you will not do it. And if you are, even if shit is tough, it'll take you a longer journey.
Yeah.
You'll do one venture, you'll fail, you try it again, but you
Yeah.
will make it happen. That is the single most critical part.
Yeah.
Are you the right person to be solving that problem?
Based on experience or knowledge? I'm keeping the two separate. Like, are you from the field and capable of solving the problem, or is it because you've done your research and your DD and you know everything about it, which is why you're ready to solve the problem?
Man, more important than that, it's man, I don't want to say passion. Again, it's a goddamn cliche, but it's that, man. It's like, does it keep you up at night or not? Because even if you don't have the experience, even if you don't have the knowledge, if you're that motivated to solve it, you will plug that gap in. You won't do it today. You'll go work in a place where you're solving that problem. You'll learn. You'll get the experience from there. You'll do your shit tons of DD. But if you do not have that, you will always do everything at a very base level, like consultants do, right? Like very fancy looking presentations and, you know, like back of the envelope conversations that'll make a pitch deck. But you want to really delve deep into being able to solve it, right? A core of you, do you want to solve that problem, right? That's really where it comes down to. And solving problem doesn't mean it has to be altruistic. It can be an e-commerce fashion play for all I care, man. If it's something you're genuinely passionate about, right? Some people are, they just love retail and things like that, right? So they are. If you are that type of person, then you're going to be able to bridge the gap and make it happen.
I never thought of it like that. I never thought of it like that, actually. But because for me, it's like the passion is a given. You know, you gotta be.
You'd be surprised, man, how many people bullshit themselves into thinking they're passionate about solving it, but it's not there, right? So a lot of these players, like, it's just a good business idea that works in theory. And I was one of those, right? I personally hated the problem. I've moved in Islamabad, Lahore, Karachi, electrician, plumbers. This is the biggest pain in my ass. So I thought, okay, this is a problem I face myself. I really want to fix it. I had a lot of on paper things that ticked it off, but it came down to the ultimate thing. When I really wanted to solve it, I did not give a shit if some auntie in defense is getting her sink fixed at a reasonable cost. But I really gave a shit about the life of the karigar. And what I wanted to solve was his access to capital, which is what I always wanted to do. I was just going about it roundabout way. Honest answer is because I was just too big of a pussy to go for fintech direct. I did a bit of research. I found out everyone is in their mid 30s, early 40s or so. They have more experience. To have an NBFC, I didn't have the qualifications to ever be able to do it. So I'm like, yaar, uska kya karunga? Find another CEO and tell him, meri company ka CEO ban jao. And all these really redundant things I realized don't really matter. Just made me too scared to go at it directly. So I thought, roundabout way, this is what I want to do. But the core thing that I wanted to solve, right, that was consistent. And if I just made a beeline for it from the get-go, then I would have been a lot more successful. And I am still kind of doing that. That's why I landed Creditbook. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. So now I'm, alhamdulillah, on track for this.
Awesome.
But that's the most fundamental thing. It's on paper, a lot of people would tick it off and think that they've got it, right? But it's about how deep you go into really understanding. Like it's called first principles thinking. Is khair, completely wrong example of first principles thinking, but it's similar to first principle thinking. If I break it down to the most, first principle thinking is about a fundamental universal truth for the world. If you break it down to a fundamental truth about yourself, right? You can get to that core and be like, is this aligning on that level? Then it'll work. And if not, then it's just you didn't put enough time thinking. You just did some shallow ass shit and you're just thinking, shayad main kar sakta hu, dekh lunga. And this is just one of those models. Some people, by the way, are still successful like that, but they are the lucky ones. They got the momentum and it got tired and they were able to get an exit at a good time that worked out. But they would never be able to survive a tough time where you really have to pull the grit out, put your head down and just keep grinding to make it happen. If you don't have that alignment right there, you will burn out. You may think you are like the most hardworking person in the world. 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, you will burn out. Because it's not a guarantee that's going to happen in 3 years, 5 years, 1 year, 6 months. Like people look at like all the best of them, by the way. I'm mad respect for Bazaar. What they've built and the time they've built is crazy huge. But
for who?
That's the Bazaar. That's the exception to the norm. Many of these players are guys who've been in it for years and years and years and years, and then they're finally cracking and getting in there. Did one venture, failed, then did another one, failed, then got another one in over there, right? So that long duration of it, you're not going to be able to survive it if you're not really aligned on a fundamental level.
Wow. Damn, dude. I don't know why you don't like hearing yourself, by the way. You speak with so much passion. You should be doing this. You should be on this side.
Content is good. The audio is not fine. Looks, by the way, I have no problem. Some people have this issue. They hate the way they look on camera. I have accepted I'm the embodiment of Homer Simpson. And I'm very chill with that. But it's just the sound of the voice for some reason very सड़ती है.
But आखिरी सवाल है आपके लिए कि if you could go back in time and you could meet your younger self, what would you say to him?
Man, I hate this. I do this every night before going to sleep, and it's a different time. Like, yahan main chand maru, wahan main chand maru. The most basic thing I would tell myself is just take a gamble, man, which is fucking funny, by the way. I'm a natural juari. I gamble like mad on everything. But a bunch of core critical decisions in my life, right? If I worked out why they didn't work out the way that they did, it's just that I didn't have the balls to just do it. Simple answer right now. What did I study in uni? I studied economics. It's my third best subject. I was better at math, physics, chem by a mile. I was good enough at economics and I was good at it. So I got by. But by a mile, I was better at those. And the only reason I didn't do it was because what did I do for a job? I asked everyone in Pakistan and they said you can be like a university professor. If I'd asked anyone bahar, they say you can work at a hedge fund and get paid shit tons. Maybe I'd have been more chill over there. I said, yeah, but professor nahi banna aur kya karna jane. I said, fuck it, I'll study it, I'll figure something out, man. But just having the guts to pursue it through. And this is whether when I studied it there, whether it's the first startup ideas going for fintech in the first one, whether it's a startup that I decided to do in the first place, right? Just a couple of core decisions to just say, fuck it, man, I'm going deep into this. There are 2 critical hires I could have made. And I was a little hesitant on it, saying, no, I need more research. I need more, hands-on experience. And I just didn't take the plunge there. And looking back at all of it, man, I'm just like, if I just fucking done it, may have worked, may not have worked. But I know for a fact that this didn't work. So I had better odds just going for it. So that's what I tell everyone, man. Like, just take a chance. But be very, very aware. This is obviously coming from an immense place of privilege that I have. I'm very cognizant of that fact. Take a chance where the opportunity allows. Do not take a risk bigger than you can afford to take, right? So simple, like even in gambling, like people, remember this guy who bet away his rent money and he came crying to me saying, bro, but it was a 1-outer and he hit a straight flush. And I'm thinking, that's 1 in 52, bro. That's 2% chance. You play 500 hands a day. Like, you should see that happening like at least 10 times. That's not the outlier you're thinking it is. Even if the chances are super, super slim, if the negative repercussion is something that'll wipe you out, you absolutely cannot afford it. Don't take the gamble like that. Because then you will have a regret, right? Then you're being a juari. If you've got enough to be able to take it and say, okay, if it doesn't work out, I can take another shot later, or I'll pivot, I'll do something else. Then on those, you should be big and bold and just have an inner faith in what your gut is telling you.
Wow. No one's said that. Well, huh?
बहुत deep हो गया ना?
बहुत deep हो गया. किसी ने, you're not the first one to say this, all right? But if you want an easy answer, I would have just said, just say nothing. I would say nothing to my younger self. जो किया अच्छा किया.
नहीं, not that.
That's a safe answer.
मैंने इतने mistakes किए, मैं तो सबसे पहले मैं कुछ कहता नहीं, कि मैं चंड तो बहुत मारता.
नहीं, but I've heard this before on the show, but someone saying it with this much passion and like eloquence, तो नहीं. But yeah, man, thanks for coming on, dude. This was fun.
Thanks for having me.
For all those watching and listening, hope you enjoyed this one. If you have any recommendations for who should be coming on next, let me know. This is episode 28, 29, 30. Doesn't matter. We're going to keep going on and on and on. But yeah, see you guys in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.